Jesus exalts the humble through the Divine Mercy Chaplet. There is a silence that frightens the world but awakens heaven. A silence that doesn't come from the absence of sound, but from the surrender of the soul. When the noise of pride fades, when the heart stops defending itself, and when the spirit bows before what it cannot control, then, and only then, heaven begins to listen. This is the moment when the story of divine mercy begins. Most people believe God acts when we speak, when we command, when we demand. But the truth revealed through the Divine Mercy Chaplet is that God acts most powerfully when we are still. The proud speak to be heard. The humble are heard because they trust. Every "Have mercy on us" is not a plea shouted into the void. It is a whisper that shakes eternity. The humble do not need to prove their faith. They live it. They embody it. And that's why Jesus exalts them. The Divine Mercy Chaplet is not just a repetition of prayers. It's a dialogue between the infinite and the small, between the Creator and the creature who dares to trust. It is in that trust, in that surrender, that the gates of mercy open wider than fear. Every bead becomes an act of humility. Every word, a key that unlocks divine compassion. Those who kneel before Christ in sincerity are not lowering themselves. They are rising to the height of heaven's grace. This is what the world cannot understand, because everything around us tells us to climb, to dominate, to be noticed. Yet Jesus teaches the opposite. Whoever humbles himself will be exalted. That is not a metaphor. It is the law of the kingdom of God. A law written not in stone, but in the human heart. One that beats in rhythm with the suffering and resurrection of Christ. So as you listen to this message, let go of everything you think makes you worthy. The prayers, the efforts, the performances, all of it fades before one simple act of trust. In the eyes of Jesus, the smallest soul that says, "Jesus, I trust in you," with sincerity, holds more power than the proudest saint who prays for recognition. Because humility is not weakness, it is divine alignment. It is the echo of heaven inside the human heart. In this reflection, we will enter the sacred mystery of how Jesus exalts the humble, how he lifts those who bow, heals those who surrender, and crowns those who trust. Through the Divine Mercy Chaplet, he does not simply forgive, he restores. He takes what was broken and turns it into a vessel of glory. The proud resist mercy. The humble attract it. And perhaps today, that's all heaven has been waiting for. Not your perfection, not your achievements, not your eloquence, but your surrender. Because when you finally fall to your knees, you will discover what pride has hidden from you all along. The hands of Christ were already reaching down. The silence that heaven exalts. There is a silence that doesn't come from the absence of sound, but from the fullness of surrender. It is not the quiet of emptiness, it is the quiet of presence. It is that sacred pause between fear and faith, where the soul no longer fights to be seen, and finally allows itself to be known by God. In that silence, heaven bends closer. Because the language of the humble is not spoken with lips, but with surrender. Heaven exalts the silence that is born from trust. Many people mistake silence for weakness, thinking that to be quiet is to be forgotten. But in the eyes of God, silence is not abandonment. It is preparation. It is in that stillness that the heart learns to listen. And in listening, the soul begins to understand what the noise of the world has always drowned out. That God never stopped speaking. He simply speaks in a different tone, one that only the humble can hear. The proud demand explanations, but the humble receive revelation. There are moments when we pray and hear nothing, when heaven seems to close its doors and God remains silent. Yet in those moments, something unseen is happening. That silence is not punishment, it's purification. God is teaching the soul to rely not on feelings, not on signs, but on trust, because true faith is born not when God speaks, but when He is silent and we still believe. The humble soul doesn't lose hope when heaven is quiet. It waits, and in waiting, it grows closer to the heart of Christ. This is the mystery that the Divine Mercy Chaplet reveals so profoundly. Each word, each repetition, is not a cry to break the silence, but a rhythm that allows us to enter it. Have mercy on us and on the whole world is not a demand, it's a surrender. It's the sound of humility echoing through eternity. It's a confession that says, I am small, and that's why I am safe. When we stop trying to fill the silence, we begin to hear the pulse of heaven within it. Jesus exalts the humble because they dwell where He Himself chose to dwell. In the silence of obedience, in the hiddenness of love. He was silent before His accusers, silent before the cross, silent even before death. That silence was not defeat. It was victory disguised as surrender. The humble follow that same path, and through the chaplet, they learn to imitate it. They pray not to be heard by others, but to be united with Him, who prays in every heartbeat of creation. When the soul finally embraces this truth, it begins to understand that silence is not empty space, it's sacred space. The moment you stop defending your pain and simply offer it, you become part of the divine dialogue. Heaven exalts that moment because it is pure. Pride speaks loudly, but mercy listens deeply. And in that listening, heaven descends. So if you feel forgotten, if your prayers seem unanswered, if your heart is tired of waiting, know this: heaven is not ignoring you, it is adoring your silence. The prayer of the humble resounds louder in eternity than the sermons of the proud. And one day, you will see that the silence you feared was actually the place where Jesus was closest, preparing to lift you higher than you ever imagined. The kingdom where crowns are laid down. The world teaches us to climb. From the moment we open our eyes to life, we are told that worth is measured by how high we stand, how much we own, how many applaud our name. But the kingdom of heaven operates under a completely different order. There, every crown must first be laid down. Every soul that rises has first knelt. Every triumph begins with surrender. It is a kingdom that no human ambition can conquer, for its gates only open to those who bow. Jesus revealed this law not in words alone, but in the way He lived. He, who was the Lord of all creation, chose a manger instead of a throne, fishermen instead of scholars, a cross instead of a crown. He could have reigned with power, but He reigned with love. And love, true love, is always humble. In the Divine Mercy Chaplet, this mystery unfolds like a living sermon. Each prayer reminds the soul that greatness in God's eyes is measured by obedience, not pride. For the sake of His sorrowful passion, we say. It is not a phrase of despair, it is a declaration of victory through humility. Every time the proud build their towers higher, heaven waits for the quiet soul who simply says, "Your will be done." Because pride builds monuments that time will destroy, but humility builds altars that eternity remembers. The kingdom of Christ is built upon these altars, on the tears of those who forgive, on the prayers of those who endure without resentment, on the faith of those who trust, even when they cannot see. These are the souls that Jesus exalts. These are the true builders of His kingdom. In this kingdom, the thrones are not made of gold, but of mercy. The saints are not those who won wars, but those who won over themselves. To be exalted in heaven is to be emptied of self, to allow God to reign without resistance. The chaplet teaches us this secret rhythm. Every repetition of mercy is a lowering of pride, and every lowering becomes a step upward toward glory. This is why the humble rise while the proud fall. The proud depend on their own strength, but strength fades. The humble depend on God, and God never fails. To the world, humility looks like defeat, but in the eyes of heaven, it is the seed of resurrection. It is the hidden power that moves mountains without shouting. It is the silent victory that turns the cross into a throne. So when you pray the chaplet and whisper the words that have crossed centuries, you are participating in that great reversal. You are laying down your own crown so that Christ may place upon your soul a greater one forged not of earthly metals, but of eternal grace. The kingdom where crowns are laid down is not far away. It begins every time a heart says yes to God's will. Every act of humility is a coronation in disguise, every surrender a new reign of love. And one day, when all the crowns of the earth have turned to dust, only the crowns laid at the feet of Jesus will shine. Those who lowered themselves will stand highest in His light, not because they sought it, but because they let go of everything that kept them from His heart. When the light bends toward the lowly, there is a mystery in how light behaves. It always bends downward, seeking what lies below. It does not remain above the mountains. It descends into valleys, into places shadowed and forgotten. Divine grace behaves the same way. It bends toward the humble. It does not dwell in the palaces of pride, but in the hearts of those who have nothing left to boast of except their trust in God. When Jesus looks upon the world, His gaze is not drawn to those who shine by their own efforts, but to those who are hidden, who still whisper prayers in the dark. That is where His light rests. The Divine Mercy Chaplet reveals this descent of light. Every time it is prayed, it becomes a current of grace flowing from the wounded heart of Christ toward the wounds of humanity. It travels downward, not upward. It searches for the broken, the small, the repentant. Those who have been overlooked by others become the first to be noticed by heaven. This is the reversal of divine order. What the world discards, God crowns. And those who seem furthest from glory are often the closest to His mercy. In moments of suffering, we often look upward, begging for the light to come. But in truth, the light is already descending. It is finding the cracks of our pain and entering quietly, like dawn entering through a narrow window. The humble soul does not resist this light. It opens. Pride builds walls. Humility opens doors. The one who kneels does not lose dignity. He becomes a vessel for divine radiance. The chaplet is that open door, a repeated act of surrender that allows the light of Christ to reach even the deepest shadows of the heart. There are those who live surrounded by brightness, yet remain in darkness, and there are those who walk in sorrow, yet glow with the peace of God. What makes the difference is not circumstance, but surrender. The lowly soul that prays with sincerity becomes like a mirror that reflects heaven's light to others. This reflection is not loud. It is quiet, but irresistible. It transforms the atmosphere around it. It comforts, heals, and restores without demanding attention. That is how God works, through the unnoticed, the small, the faithful. When Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," He revealed the very structure of divine illumination. The poor in spirit are not empty, they are clear. Their humility allows grace to pass through them without distortion. They do not claim ownership of light. They transmit it. And in doing so, they become part of the divine movement itself, the descent of mercy into a fallen world. The chaplet is the rhythm of this descent, a song of light that never rises in pride, but always bows in love. So when you pray, do not ask for the light to lift you out of your pain. Ask for it to meet you within it. Because that is where God prefers to dwell, inside the lowly places of the heart, where the noise fades and the soul finally listens. The proud may shine for a moment, but the humble glow forever. Heaven's light always bends downward, and when it finds the soul that kneels in trust, it never departs. The hidden pulse of the divine mercy. There is a heartbeat that echoes beneath every word of the Divine Mercy Chaplet. It is not human, it is divine. It is the pulse of a love that never sleeps, a rhythm that beats through eternity, calling the lost, healing the wounded, lifting the humble. The proud rarely hear it, for pride is too loud. But the humble soul, the one who prays without pretense, feels it deeply. It is the pulse of Jesus himself, the living current of his mercy, flowing from his pierced heart into the world. And it moves strongest through those who have emptied themselves of everything but trust. The chaplet is not only a devotion, it is participation in that heartbeat. Every repetition, for the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world, is like the throb of divine compassion reaching into human misery. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It only needs to be sincere. In the silence between each phrase, something unseen happens. Grace travels. Mercy flows. Heaven breathes. Those who pray without pride become channels through which this pulse reaches others who can no longer pray for themselves. It is a mystery of substitution, the humble carrying the proud, the repentant redeeming the careless, the small sustaining the strong. Many wonder why their prayers seem unanswered, why heaven feels distant. But mercy does not always manifest in visible miracles. It first transforms the soul that prays. The more one prays the chaplet with humility, the more the heart begins to beat in harmony with Christ's. Slowly, the rhythm of anxiety changes into the rhythm of peace. The proud heart fights for control, but the humble one surrenders to the divine timing that never fails. Mercy moves in that surrender. It cannot flow through clenched hands. It requires open ones. The hidden pulse of the divine mercy can be felt most clearly in suffering. In moments when the world offers no answers, the chaplet becomes a sacred rhythm that keeps the soul alive. It whispers through the pain, "Trust, even now." And when the soul dares to trust in darkness, the flow of mercy intensifies. It cleanses guilt, softens resentment, heals silent wounds that no one else can see. That is why the humble are exalted. They have stopped resisting the flow of grace. They have become one with the current of divine compassion. Jesus revealed to Saint Faustina that his mercy is greater than any sin, any failure, any despair. But this mercy is not random. It seeks a vessel. It needs a heart willing to receive it and pass it on. Pride blocks it. Humility welcomes it. That is why the most powerful prayers are often whispered by those who feel unworthy. They are closest to the source. They do not demand, they trust. And in that trust, the pulse of heaven beats stronger within them. Every time you pray the chaplet, imagine your words as part of that sacred heartbeat, one that began on the cross and will continue until the last soul is saved. You are not praying alone. You are joining the eternal rhythm of divine love that never stops reaching downward. To feel this pulse is to touch eternity. And when the humble heart beats with the same rhythm as Christ's, heaven cannot help but exalt it. The weight of invisible crowns. There are crowns that the world can see, crowns made of gold, of applause, of titles that shine for a time and then fade. But there are also crowns that remain hidden, unseen by human eyes, resting upon the souls of the humble. These crowns carry no jewels, yet their light reaches heaven. They are not heavy with pride, but with grace. The weight of these invisible crowns is not a burden. It is a glory so pure that only those who bow before God can bear it. When Jesus said that the meek shall inherit the earth, he did not mean the land beneath our feet, but the peace that surpasses all understanding. The humble inherit the peace that the proud spend their lives chasing but never find. That peace is the first jewel of their invisible crown. It cannot be bought, and it cannot be stolen, because it is given only to those who have emptied themselves. Pride collects trophies. Humility receives treasures. The chaplet of divine mercy is the prayer that teaches the soul to make that exchange. It teaches how to let go of the visible to receive what is eternal. Every "have mercy on us" is a step away from the throne of self and a step toward the throne of Christ. Every act of humility polishes that hidden crown with the light of heaven. The humble may not know they are crowned, but heaven does. Angels recognize them by their radiance. They walk through life quietly, unnoticed, yet their presence carries a divine fragrance. The fragrance of mercy, of gentleness, of truth, lived in silence. They do not seek exaltation, but it follows them wherever they go because Jesus himself walks with them. The weight of invisible crowns is the weight of love that has been purified through suffering and surrender. It is the silent endurance of those who forgive without being asked, who pray for those who wound them, who smile even when misunderstood. This is not weakness, it is strength sanctified. These souls carry on their heads what cannot be seen, and on their hearts what cannot be measured. Their humility becomes the vessel that contains heaven's favor. Through the Divine Mercy Chaplet, Jesus teaches us to desire these crowns, the kind that will never fade. He does not promise earthly reward, but something far greater: participation in his own victory. When we humble ourselves, we begin to share in his cross. When we persevere in faith, we begin to share in his crown. But unlike the crowns of kings, his is made of thorns turned to light. The humble wear the same. They do not avoid the cross, they transform it. One day, when the final judgment reveals the truth of every heart, many who were celebrated on earth will stand silently as the forgotten rise. Their crowns will not glitter, but they will shine with an eternal light, the reflection of a life lived in trust and hidden love. The weight of these invisible crowns will be the reward of every humble soul who whispered the chaplet in faith, not to be seen, but to be heard by heaven. The battle between pride and mercy. There is a silent war being fought every day, one that no army sees, one that rages not on the battlefield of nations, but within the human heart. It is the battle between pride and mercy. Pride was the first rebellion against God. It was the fall of the angels, the whisper that said, "I will not serve." It was the voice that echoed again in Eden when humanity reached for what did not belong to it. Since that moment, pride has declared war against mercy, because mercy exposes its illusion. Pride builds walls, mercy breaks them. Pride demands justice for others, mercy seeks forgiveness for all. And in this invisible conflict, the Divine Mercy Chaplet becomes the weapon of heaven. Each repetition of the chaplet strikes against pride's fortress. For the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world." Those words are a sword of humility, cutting through the arrogance of self-sufficiency. The proud heart cannot pray this sincerely. It resists depending on God. But the humble heart bows, and in bowing, it conquers. Every soul that kneels before the crucified declares war against the oldest lie, that we can save ourselves. Mercy is heaven's counterattack. It enters where pride once ruled and plants the flag of surrender that becomes victory. Pride always disguises itself as strength. It tells us that control is safety, that vulnerability is weakness. But it is in the moment of surrender that the greatest strength is born. Mercy is not passive. It is power restrained by love. It does not destroy the sinner. It disarms him. It transforms rebellion into repentance, turning the heart from defiance to devotion. In the presence of divine mercy, pride has no defense left. It crumbles, not through force, but through love, too great to resist. Jesus waged this battle on the cross. The proud mocked him, saying, "If you are the Son of God, come down." But mercy chose to stay. The King remained nailed in humility, answering pride with forgiveness. That moment was the turning point of all creation, the defeat of arrogance by compassion. Every time we pray the chaplet, we relive that victory. We take part in that same surrender. The humble who pray it become soldiers in this divine war, not by conquering others, but by conquering themselves. In daily life, pride tempts us to compare, to prove, to control. Mercy invites us to release, to trust, to forgive. Pride says, "I deserve better." Mercy says, "God knows best." Pride keeps the wound open. Mercy lets it heal. And the more we practice mercy, the less space pride finds to grow. That is why the humble rise. They no longer fight for their own glory, only for God's. The battle between pride and mercy is not about who wins power. It is about who wins peace. When the soul finally lays down its arms and prays, "Jesus, I trust in you," the war ends. Pride is silenced, and mercy reigns. The Divine Mercy Chaplet is the anthem of that peace. It is the prayer that reminds every soul. The victory of heaven is not domination, it is redemption. And in this battle, the humble always stand on the winning side. The moment heaven bows first. There is a mystery so profound that only the humble can grasp it. The moment when heaven itself bows before man. It sounds impossible, even scandalous, yet it is the very essence of divine mercy. When Jesus knelt to wash the feet of his disciples, he revealed a secret hidden since the foundation of the world. The Almighty does not rule through dominance, but through humility. The Creator bows before his creation not to diminish his glory, but to reveal that his glory is love that stoops low. And every time a soul prays the Divine Mercy Chaplet with a humble heart, that moment repeats. Heaven bends again. The proud imagine God as distant, enthroned above the clouds, unreachable. But the humble discover him at their feet, serving, cleansing, healing. This is not poetry, it is truth. The God who spoke galaxies into being chooses to meet humanity at its lowest point. He does not ask us to climb toward him. He descends to where we are. That descent is the movement of mercy. The prayer, "Have mercy on us and on the whole world," is heaven bowing once more, reaching down into human pain and transforming it from within. When Jesus appeared to Saint Faustina, radiating light from his heart, it was not the light of judgment, but of condescension, divine light bending toward human misery. He told her, The greater the sinner, the greater the right he has to my mercy. Those words are the heartbeat of a God who kneels first. Before we even think of repentance, he is already waiting. Before we say a single prayer, he is already offering forgiveness. The proud resist this because pride hates dependence, but the humble receive it because they know that salvation is not earned, it is embraced. This is the reversal that terrifies the powers of darkness. The devil sought to ascend, but God chose to descend. The fallen one wanted to rise above God, but God rose through humility. In every act of mercy, that truth is proclaimed again. Love's strength lies in its ability to stoop lower than sin, to touch what others avoid, to lift what has fallen. That is the moment heaven bows first. It happens in confession, in forgiveness, in every humble prayer offered from a broken heart. When you kneel to pray the chaplet, you are not the first to bow. Jesus is already there. His gaze meets yours from below, not above. His hands, scarred yet radiant, are already washing the dust of your journey. You do not approach him. He approaches you. The humble soul recognizes this and weeps not out of guilt, but out of wonder. Because the realization that God serves his children with such tenderness breaks every illusion of distance. Heaven bows first because love always moves first. Divine mercy is not a reaction. It is an initiative. It is God saying, I will come to you before you come to me. That is why the humble are exalted. They understand that the highest place is found in kneeling beside Christ, where he kneels beside them. And when the soul accepts that sacred exchange, pride loses its throne and love reigns forever. Where tears become prayers. There are moments when words fail, when the heart is too heavy to speak and pain becomes a language of its own. In those moments, prayer is no longer something we say. It becomes something we live. Tears take the place of words, and heaven understands them perfectly. Every tear shed in faith becomes a seed of mercy, watered by grace, gathered by the hands of Christ himself. This is the sacred mystery of the Divine Mercy Chaplet. It teaches the soul that even when speech is gone, prayer remains. Because in God's presence, tears are not weakness. They are worship. The humble soul knows this truth deeply. When it prays, it does not try to impress God with eloquence or posture. It comes trembling, broken, but real. That sincerity has more power than the loudest sermon. Each "Have mercy on us" rises from the same place as tears, from the center of surrender. The proud hide their pain behind control, but the humble offer it as incense. And that offering does not vanish into the air. It ascends straight to the heart of Jesus. The Divine Mercy Chaplet becomes a bridge for those who can no longer speak, a rhythm that transforms sorrow into communion. Every drop of pain offered in prayer is redeemed. Nothing is wasted. The tears shed in silence, the sighs whispered in exhaustion, the moments when you cannot even form a single sentence, all of these become prayers when united with Christ's suffering. On the cross, Jesus also prayed without words. His body became the prayer. His wounds became intercession. And in that sacred agony, he gathered every human tear and turned it into a fountain of redemption. That is the same fountain that flows through the chaplet. It is mercy made flesh, mercy made near. Sometimes we think God listens only when we are strong, but his greatest attention falls upon the broken. When a tear falls with faith, it echoes louder in heaven than any choir. The humble understand that the shortest distance between pain and peace is a single sigh that says, Jesus, I trust in you. That trust turns anguish into light. It does not erase the pain. It sanctifies it. It gives meaning to what once felt meaningless. The Divine Mercy Chaplet teaches the heart to see tears differently. They are not proof of defeat. They are evidence of love. They show that the heart is still alive, still capable of faith. When prayed in the spirit of humility, tears are not a sign that God has abandoned us. They are proof that He is close enough to touch our wounds. Mercy does not ask us to stop crying. It invites us to cry with hope. Every tear that falls in trust becomes a prayer that never dies, because Christ keeps it. One day, those tears will no longer fall. They will shine. What we offer in sorrow will return to us in glory. The humble will see that their pain was not forgotten, their silence not ignored. Each moment of trust in darkness will become a jewel on the crown of mercy that God Himself will place upon them. Because in the end, it was never about avoiding tears. It was about letting them become prayers strong enough to reach heaven and tender enough to move the heart of Jesus. The humility that opens eternity. There is a threshold every soul must cross to enter eternity, and it is lower than pride can bend. That threshold is humility. It is the door that leads from time into the heart of God. Many search for complicated ways to reach heaven, thinking it demands perfection, knowledge, or greatness. But Jesus made it simple. Learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart. Those who learn humility learn the language of eternity. Because heaven does not open to the powerful. It opens to those who trust. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself in truth. It is the awareness that everything good in you is a gift, not an achievement. The proud heart holds its breath trying to earn love, but the humble heart breathes freely, knowing it is already loved. The Divine Mercy Chaplet trains the soul in that rhythm of trust. It teaches the heart to rest in what God has already done instead of striving to prove what it can do. Each word of the prayer is a step away from self-dependence and a step closer to divine intimacy. The humility that opens eternity is not built in a moment. It is shaped in silence, refined in suffering, and proven in mercy. It is the patience that forgives when no one apologizes. It is the faith that prays even when heaven seems silent. It is the love that serves without being seen. This kind of humility opens the eyes of the soul to recognize the presence of God in every circumstance, even in pain. The proud demand to understand, but the humble simply adore. That adoration becomes the beginning of eternity within the heart. In this humility, fear loses its voice. The soul no longer trembles before judgment because it knows mercy has already spoken its name. Jesus lifts the humble because they have already let go of everything that weighs them down. They no longer cling to control, reputation, or success. They have found the one treasure that cannot be taken away: trust in divine mercy. This is the humility that allows the soul to enter heaven long before it dies, living already in the atmosphere of eternal love. To pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet is to rehearse eternity. It aligns the heart with heaven's rhythm, receiving and giving mercy, trusting and forgiving, bowing and rising again. Each humble repetition is a step toward eternal life, not because of effort, but because of surrender. The humble soul doesn't knock on heaven's door. It finds it already open. For where pride sees distance, humility sees invitation. Eternity does not begin after death. It begins the moment a soul truly trusts in God. When humility takes root, time loses its grip, and the soul starts to live in divine presence now. This is why Jesus exalts the humble. They already live where he reigns. Their hearts are his throne. Their surrender is his kingdom. And when their final breath comes, they will not be strangers at heaven's gate. They will simply walk into the home they've already entered through trust. The throne built from knees that bend. The greatest thrones in heaven are not carved from gold or adorned with jewels. They are built from the knees that learned to bend. Every act of humility, every silent prayer, every surrender that cost something becomes a stone in that eternal throne. This is the divine paradox that confounds the world. Those who kneel the lowest reign the highest. The path of the humble does not lead to obscurity. It leads straight into the heart of God. The very posture of surrender that the world calls weakness is the position from which heaven rules. When Jesus knelt in Gethsemane, sweating blood in agony, he was already enthroned. In that act of obedience, he established a kingdom not of domination, but of mercy. The Divine Mercy Chaplet is born from that same surrender. Each prayer is a continuation of that kneeling, our small hearts joining the eternal submission of the Son to the Father. For the sake of his sorrowful passion, have mercy on us and on the whole world. Those words build something invisible yet unshakable. They construct within the soul a throne where Christ can reign, where pride no longer governs and peace becomes law. The proud stand tall but live unstable, always defending their height. The humble kneel and discover stability that cannot be shaken. They do not seek to rise, yet they are lifted. They do not seek crowns, yet they are crowned. They do not demand recognition, yet they are remembered in eternity. This is the secret justice of God. He exalts what the world ignores. Every tear, every moment of trust, every whispered prayer becomes a brick in the throne of his mercy. To kneel is to agree with heaven's order. It is to recognize who God is and who we are in relation to him. It is not humiliation, it is restoration. When a soul bends in reverence, heaven descends in response. That union, heaven coming down, the soul bowing up, is the meeting point of love and eternity. That is the architecture of divine exaltation. Through the chaplet, we rehearse this meeting again and again until the heart naturally bends in prayer, in gratitude, in love. The throne built from knees that bend is not reserved for saints already perfected. It begins in every soul willing to bow today. It begins with the one who prays in weakness, the one who forgives despite pain, the one who says, "Jesus, I trust in you," even when nothing makes sense. That is where heaven begins its construction. Christ does not reign from afar. He reigns from within, in every humble soul that lets him. And one day, when all kingdoms of the earth have fallen and every name fades, the only thrones that will remain standing will be those built in silence, built in mercy, built from surrender. The crowns upon them will not glitter. They will shine with the reflected light of the one who knelt first, the one who turned humility into glory. The humble will rise, not because they sought exaltation, but because they built, with every act of trust, the throne upon which love himself would sit forever.